All right, welcome back to the Queer Economy. Today we're joined by Marcus James, or Chef Marcu, a trailblazing chef, entrepreneur, and community builder whose journey is as inspiring as it is impactful. From being the only Black trans person on a college campus to founding Alleyway Dinner Society, your story is about resilience, creativity, and finding purpose. And I'm so excited to dive in. Welcome, Marcus.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
You wear a lot of different hats. You're a
Yeah.
chef, you're an entrepreneur, you're building your community. So how would you sum all of the things that you do up in one sentence?
I would kind of probably have to sum it up in I am a big bowl of lovable soup. That's what I would go with my one sentence, a big bowl of lovable soup.
Awesome. I love that. Full of happiness.
Yeah, full of happiness. You can't be mad at a good big bowl of soup.
We'll talk more about soup later because I want to hear all your hot takes on soup. Before we dive into what you're doing currently as a chef and the cool things that you've been doing, let's go back a little bit. I'm thinking let's start back in college. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what it was like navigating college with your identity as the only Black trans person on campus and how it shaped you into who you are today.
I think I got to campus thinking it would be just as progressive as the city that I come from, and it was not. I went to school in the Poconos, East Stroudsburg University, which is a relatively small campus. It's not a very mixed campus. I think there might have been 100, maybe 200 Black people in general to the 15,000 students that went there. And then for me to also have another intersection of being trans and coming into a space that didn't have any environment for me to bud in that environment. And while they had like a small like LGBTQ center, it was not at all what I would expect for it to have been in that time. And I think what it made me do was learn how to create rooms. It taught me how to create the space that I don't see, or like what is missing and how do I make sure it happens before I leave this place? And that's what I did, right? I joined in on helping them build their LGBTQ center. And I think they needed that kind of representation, but they also needed another eye, another influence that wasn't just like cis, het, and white, but also queer. I think what it allowed me to do was build like true organizing skills. And that is probably what got me this far in my current stance of what today looks like.
Yeah, that's incredible. It takes a lot, I think, often as queer people, there's certain spaces we navigate where we're in survival mode.
Absolutely.
We're truly just hoping to get through it. And, you don't know how people are going to treat you or what their views are on our identity. Yeah. But to be able to walk into a space like that and go, okay, this is not what I hoped for, but I'm going to leave it better than I found it so that the next person like me finds what I hoped I would have found. Absolutely. That's powerful.
Thank you. I appreciate
it. And that takes some work to step forward a little bit and say, okay, no, this is not it. Let's do a little bit more. So I'm curious, was there parts of your journey pre-college, accepting your identity, figuring out who you are? Were there certain parts of that journey that prepared you for your time in college where you were able to really build community?
So I got to give a huge shout out to the Attic Youth Center here in Philadelphia, which is like the LGBT youth center. It's what I thought I was going to get when I got to college, and I was sadly mistaken. When I came to Philly, I had not been raised here. I was raised in Florida by my aunt, who in Florida, first of all, in general, at that time, it was quite conservative and religious. So when I got here, I was in shock that there were so many things available, so many resources, so many understandings already available. And I think going into that youth center and seeing like the level of programming and people who had found themselves allowed me to like just sink right on in. Like, okay, I'm not the only one. Somebody somewhere has already figured out how to live and live a good life. And so while I was there, I took a lot of the leadership on. I participated in every class, every, resource thing, every trip that we took, and learning from the people that were there who really fostered a lot of my exploration. I think they let me take as much lead as I wanted to, which was great. And I think now that I look back at that is the true like full circle moment. Looking back at what I've been able to accomplish and what they did to help me get there and get stable and get an understanding of myself, and no pressure to find an identity, but just to find which one felt best for me. I think that had everything to do with the way I walked onto that college campus.
That's amazing. You may have seen people posting about the butterfly effect, thinking of like one moment in time if it was different, how different their life would be. And it sounds like that youth center is kind of one of those key moments for you.
Absolutely.
Not only in your own personal experience and loving yourself, accepting yourself, figuring out your identity, but also in modeling how to create that type of space for other people, which you then went on to do. So
Yeah.
that's incredible.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So you entered college, and from an academic standpoint, was your plan to be a private chef? If not, what was your plan and what led you to where you are now?
Boy, oh boy, let me tell you. What's so interesting about this journey for me right now is that I still don't want to be a private chef, which is crazy.
Okay.
I entered college with the intention of being an entertainer.
Mm.
I played clarinet, bass clarinet, tenor sax, alto sax. I sing, so it kind of made sense for me to end up in music or something of the arts. I was always great at talking and engaging with people, and I was like, I don't know what to do with that, but let's do theater. So I was like, oh, let me do theater, but I'll do a background in psych just in case. But I had zero plans of being a chef. I discovered that I could cook. I did not grow up in a cooking environment. Nothing would have prompted me to be a chef. All of my family are doctors and teachers, so there was no food person really influencing me.
Yeah.
I actually dropped out of college. I think that's important for people to know. First of
Yeah.
all, I dropped out of school and life came and helped me figure out me. So I ended up needing a job. Got out of college, like, oh, I guess when you leave, you kind of have to be an adult now. And so I didn't really get that. But in general, the kitchen is the most accepting place of all types of people from every area of life and walk of life. And it surely did accept me straight out of college. My first job was Chipotle. And I got there and I fell in love because back then the way Chipotle did things was very from scratch. Everything came from you chopping it or you mixing it or you making it. So I fell in love with this process, this kind of rigorous, fast-paced thing. And I was like, oh, I'm really enjoying this. Like, this is kind of fun. And I worked my way up a little bit, started being a kitchen manager, started doing stuff. And then I was like, all right, I'm kind of over Chipotle, right? And I moved on to some new restaurant. And so I started to navigate the world of culinary arts. And I started jumping from one restaurant to another and initially had zero plans. I was just keeping a job. Right, in general. And at some point, I kind of started to experiment. And this is where Instagram came into play, where it was still that little ugly blue box with the brown thing on the side, And I started to post, like, to me, terrible pictures. Trust me, those things are in the archives. Y'all don't need to see that. I mean, like, burnt things on trays, just strange items. At the time, I was just Marcus posting something. There was no intention. It wasn't until a friend hit me up. I was fresh out of college, but also still integrating my way into the world of Philadelphia's like community. I was in like a group, for like trans men, and somebody hit me up like, hey, we're having an event at this community center. Do you want to cook? And I was like, I don't know. They're like, well, does it help that we have $2,000 for you? And I was like, that helps a lot. I definitely think I want to do it. I mean, I don't even know why I thought twice. I think, yes, I'm absolutely down to do this.
$2,000, what time? I'll be there.
What time? I'll be there. Not a problem.
So they reached out to you because of your Instagram pictures that you say are horrible.
I say they're horrible. People knew I worked in restaurants, right? So like my community knew I worked in restaurants. And so they were trying to get into the space of hiring community members, right? How do we find Black queer businesses and Black queer members to pay, but also like highlight or help build? And I didn't have a business or any interest in a business at that time.
Cool.
I was looking for some extra cash. Once I realized that there was money, which is why I'm about to tell you how this still translates today. But once I realized there was like such a large demand for this service, I was like, oh, we're in business.
Yeah.
And so that 9 trays of food I brought, I mean, it was horrible. I have a picture of me standing in front of this table with my arms like stretched out wide and this 9 pans of aluminum, all these little wire racks and my cute little setup with my napkins on the side. I thought I was doing it. It was a big deal. I was kind of scared, right? Because I'd never done that before. But I was also like, I do make my food taste good at home, so I guess it's going to be good here, right? And so people loved it, and then one thing led to another, and I was getting calls. And I was like, y'all know I don't have a company, right? Like, and so somebody was like, well, you need to make one because we need somebody to pay. We have to pay you in a company format. I was like, all right, let me make up a name. I kind of rushed it a little bit, and I came up with Marcu International Kitchen. It's the longest description ever. And that was my name on Instagram for a while, just Palette Marcu. And I was posting all these, pictures. And bam, I got a call from the Mazzoni Center, which is known for hosting Pennsylvania's Trans Wellness Conference, which is like the only conference of its type that does not exist anywhere else. I got a call from a community member who was like, hey, we'd like to hire a Black queer trans, like someone of that nature to do the cooking for this event. And in fact, you'd be the first Black trans person to do this.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, well, for how many people? Oh, just 500. I just want you to know that I had only done 2 events, okay, for barely 30 people, barely. The events that I had done before getting that call were so much different than what I thought I was going to need. I don't know why I said yes to 500 people. In what world could I cook for 500 people by myself? But there's something about me that just didn't have the give up gene. And so I was like, well, just like you figured it out every other time, like, let's figure it out. Like, do the stuff wrong, do it scared. I didn't really know what I was doing, but it seemed like it was okay. And so I accept this gig, and I'm like, you know, because it was a lot of money on the table. I mean, it was the most money I'd ever seen in my life at that time, right? And it's a lot of money, and I was so nerve-wracked. I had zero idea how to prep. I had no staff. Who was going to cut all the food? Who's going to chop the... I had so many questions about who was going to do what. You know what I did? I walked down to that conference because I had rented out a church kitchen maybe 2 intersections away.
Okay.
I did all of this in an Uber, by the way. Somebody needs to write notes. I did all of this in an Uber, back and forth, right? Picking up the food, back and forth, back and forth. I went down to that conference, and I hired 5 people on the spot. I said, listen, I got $200 for each of y'all. I'm not selling nothing illegal. I just need your help, right? And by default, I knew people, so it wasn't weird, right? I thought I was going to do this by myself, by the way. I started prepping 3 days ago by myself. But I was like, oh my gosh, it's the day of the event. I have zero idea how I'm going to chop, saute, fry. I don't know what I'm going to do. And so I ran down there, and I was like, does anybody know how to hold a knife? Have you been in the kitchen before? I started interviewing. I luckily found 2 of my friends who I knew had been in the kitchen before. And so I was like, let's go. We got business to get done. I got to figure this out. I'm paying you, not a problem. Well, we got it done.
So what did you make?
Right. The thing I remember the most is, why did I make salmon croquettes? What possessed me to make salmon croquettes for 500 people? It was not a smart choice at all. Like, good, it was delicious, but it wasn't a smart catering choice, right? I made stuffed mushrooms. What is up with me? I was doing the most complicated stuffed mushrooms, but not with like a small amount of ingredients, right? I'm doing stuffed mushrooms with all kinds of peppers and onions and cheeses, and I'm just doing all kinds of stuff, right? Because I wanted them to feel like I was worth it in a way. I made mac and cheese. I mean, 5 cheese mac and cheese, gourmet, okay? 5 different cheeses. Yeah. And this was also like 3 to 4 pans of each of these items, right? So we're talking full size, like deep pans. It was quite a lot of prep. I said 500 people, and I was nervous because the line was down the street and around the block, like waiting.
Oh my gosh!
And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't run out of food. I had no idea how much to prep. I made way too much food, but it all got eaten. Very happy about that. I mean, stuffed mushrooms, salmon croquettes, mac and cheese, one of my signatures till this day. I've made it better, but people still love it. A lemon basil orzo salad. People just cannot get enough of that. I don't know what it is about the little ricey pastas that are so cute. But like, I think people really love this lemon basil orzo salad. Wow. What a day that was.
You get the phone call. You're cooking for 500. The day of it comes, you're going back and forth in an Uber. You go into the conference center, you find 5 people, you take them back with you.
Correct.
It works out. The food is great. How are you feeling?
As soon as the pan came out of the oven and I walked down that hallway and I saw all those people still waiting and not knowing who I was. No one knew who I was at all, right? Yeah. But someone stopped me and said, thank you, because I would not have eaten today if it wasn't for what you just did. And I was like, my God. I mean, I just wailed because I was paid. But the people who were eating for free or doing like a pay what you can kind of thing for like a fundraising piece. And so there were people there who didn't have any money and could not afford any other option, but still needed the space, still needed to eat, still needed to be cared for, still needed to enjoy that conference on the top level that they could. And so me taking part in such a basic human need, right, as food, that somebody stopping me to tell me thank you for that was like, God, my heart is full. Every fight, every cry I had today was worth it. The last 3 days that I didn't spend sleeping and my feet and my back and my hands hurt, this was all worth this exact moment. So I think, to say the least, I felt incredible. Yeah.
That's amazing. And you paint that picture so perfectly.
Yeah.
It's almost as if I was there watching it all go down. You and the Uber going back and forth.
It was terrible. It was terrible. The Uber guy thought it was crazy. I was like, listen, what if I pay you cash to turn the app off? Because we about to do this 3 more times. And so he helped me hustle. And it was just like, wow, okay, we did it. And nobody knew all of that went down, right? It was kind of like, it looked very perfect. I showed up with like 5 staff members that I just hired, but nobody knew that. And like we just played the game and it worked. You know, for all the people who are wondering how, fake it till you make it, because that was the real name of the game. I didn't really have any real chef skills at that point. And I feel like that was all my beginning. I had posted about it. Obviously, after it all happened, I'm showing all these pictures. Oh, I did this big event, blah, blah, blah. My uncle's like, hey, do you have a company? And I was like, no. He was like, okay, so I'm buying you an LLC. Meet me here at 8. And that's how I got a business started, right? That was like the beginning of business paperwork and understanding what it meant to be registered with the state and all this other stuff. And so he introduced me to that. And he was like, I'll pay for it. You just got to run it. And then, here we are.
That's an incredible, from your uncle, that's an incredible gesture of support.
Yeah.
To go, where are you at with this?
Yeah,
Is this official?
exactly.
If not, come meet me at 8
it.
o'clock. We'll take care of it.
Exactly.
And off you go.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so that all happened. You fed 500 people. You set up your LLC.
Yeah.
And then where has that taken you up until this point?
And what's funny enough is like it is not all perfect as it seems, obviously, right? There's a lot of behind the scenes experiences with being a black business owner, a black trans business owner, being denied at banks over and over again for funding. All those things exist, right? I had no real intention of having a company. I just kind of was surviving. That was what black transness meant at the time. It was like, can you survive this, whatever this world is? Because at that time I saw, right, I have what I like to call passing privilege. To the eye, I could essentially be seen as cis. To a lot of my peers, they were having a lot of trouble finding work and finding jobs, and they were being discriminated against for what they looked like and whether or not they passed. And passing at that time meant, do you look like a cis man or do you look like a cis woman? And that was the only 2 options. So a lot of my peers were just having a really hard time with finding work, and I didn't have a business that was stable enough to hire all of them, right? So like I wanted to help, but I really didn't have it. Like I couldn't do that. And so I think that led me to this emergence of like, I have to fight, and if this is the way I'm going to be able to fight, then I have to run this business, because I don't even know anybody else that has a business that has my identities. But lo and behold, I found some other black trans chefs that were here, but they were, what we like to call stealth. The idea at the time was that the more you can hide, the safer you are. And unfortunately, I don't think that they were prepared to give mentorship, and so they didn't. And so I had to figure this out on my own, which meant I had no examples, nobody to look up to, no book I could go read, right? No memoir to go pull off the shelf. No, that didn't exist. I looked it up. I mean, I did. I put in every word I could on Google, right? To find like who has done this and how do I find an inspo so I can understand that it's possible. My favorite quote is like, well, more of like a saying that has been passed around. Somebody is waiting for you to do it so they know that it's possible. So I was like, I was waiting for somebody. I was looking for somebody to see, like, are you sure this can, like, I can make this picture work out? This is going to go the way I want. And I didn't see that. So I got discouraged, really. I wasn't sure how to continue it. But lo and behold, the community saved me yet again. I like to say that butch queens and drag queens raised me, because it was the only reason I have the Chef Marcu name the way that I have it right now is because a local drag queen here who was like a really big icon and was a friend of mine, and she asked me what I needed as far as support, and I was like, I just need to like keep making money. I don't know really what I need. And she was like, well, do you want to come cook at my parties? And she was having these more like underground secret spaces, right? That old speakeasy vibe with the, like back in the day, okay? We used to have to hang out in the back and just keep it low profile, but we had our community regardless. And so she was having these events, and she was like, you can come cook at my events, you can vend here and do whatever you want to do. And let me tell you, we packed those houses out. So by default, I was building this name without really recognizing I was building this name. And this is 3 years in, right? So I was still in survival mode of like, I just gotta hustle. And so I would go to these events. I'm cooking all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, I'm doing the work. I was doing my big one, and people started to be like, yo, are you gonna be at this event? Are you gonna be at this next event? Are you gonna cook for this? And so people were demanding it now and looking for me, and I kind of have created a crowd and a following. And that's where the big name came from, when people were like, what's your name? What's your chef name? I was like, I don't know. My name's Marcus. Just call me Marcus. And they're like, no, what's your name? And I was like, well, my name is spelled with a Z at the end, but everybody thinks it's Marcus. I was like, right. So just take the Z off and be Marcu. And so I conceptualized again. So we took Paulette Marcu off of the board, right? And just became Chef Marcu. And you're like, yeah, that's Chef Marcu, and I saw you at this, and you did that, and you were at the conference, and people started to notice me. Initially, my first event that I threw as Chef Marcu was called the Juke Joint, which was an homage to the Black experience, right? The Juke Joint was all about the blues and all about like the singers and the community and like, you know, having that good feel and a good time and good food and good drinks. That was the point of the Juke Joint, right? And then I promise you, 2 weeks after that event, the world shut down. I had that event in the first week of March. I'm like, oh my God, did I just spread COVID everywhere? I'm like, no, none of that happened. Everybody was safe. But in general, that's where this kind of started. So really the full circle to this is I'm picking back up where I left off. So let's talk about the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So much time has passed with us all recovering as a people from that experience, as an economy, as queer people, and we all still had to find ourselves and still kind of come out of that and act like it was normal, because it wasn't, but we had to pretend that we were all going to be back to normal. 2020 came into play and wiped me out, because my business, everything that I had created, was about people. It was about being in person. It was about giving in person. So people were like, oh, why don't you do platters? And why don't you do this? And why don't you do that? But immediately, Philadelphia had all these crazy rules about outside food, right? So I didn't qualify because I had none of those licenses from the city. So 2020 came to a halt, and guess who didn't qualify the next year for the PPP loans? Right. Because I didn't have any 2 years of business bank accounts, all this stuff, the business stuff, I did not qualify for. So then it came down to like, okay, well, Marcus, what are you going to do? You either want this to continue or you're going to let it die with COVID. But I had already built a brand, right? People were like relying on me and when are you doing another event? And what are you going to cook? Are you going to cook? You know what I mean? Like asking questions and stuff. And at the time I was cooking online, right? So I was still kind of insinuating that this was continuing. And so I was doing all kinds of cooking content, and end of 2021 into 2022, I was like, okay, we cannot sit still anymore, right? I've now learned a lot in my 2 years of sitting at home, right? I've been practicing and reading and structuring. So I was like, all right, you gotta figure it out. You gotta move. So a friend of a friend was like, hey, I know this guy. He does wine. Maybe you could, make something happen. And he was already throwing dinner parties. And I was like, okay, bet. I'm in. So we collaborated. I did my thing. I designed this beautiful menu. Now I had settled into where my food inspiration really came from, right? I was trained by Latin and Asian chefs and Mediterranean influences, and my mom was really heavily into African influence, and she even married an African man. And so I made this beautiful menu that was a true homage to like Trinidadian food, and I made these West African Senegalese dumplings, and I did this whole mashup, and it was beautiful and delicious. And I even did some arancini just because I knew I could. I was having fun. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this thing. I made this beautiful, like, blueberry lemon Chavir cheesecake. It was beautiful. It was delicious. And little did I know that someone from the Philadelphia Inquirer was in the room. So I get an email like, hey, I was at your dinner party. I'm the, head writer. And so, bam, my first magazine article came out. And I was featured in FUBU's, which is Philadelphia Magazine's food magazine. So I got featured there. And then after that, I was kind of on a roll, right? Another article, Philadelphia Gay News, hit me up and wanted to also do a feature. So bam, now I'm hitting magazine articles. And I'm like, I had one dinner party, y'all. Am I missing something? Right? Like, am I missing that this is how it happens, right? Yeah. Through this imposter syndrome I'm having, because we all have that. I get a call from 6ABC News. I'm like, are you freaking serious right now? I was like, what is going on and what am I supposed to do with it? I don't understand what I'm supposed to do right now because I don't have this and I don't have that. I was all kinds of all over the place. But 6ABC News called and said, listen, we're coming to visit you. I made like a 3-course meal, whatever. I still got the page, video on my page of the news anchor, like eating my dumplings and just having 0 words. She was just like, wow, that was what they was eating the whole time. Like she was just, bewildered. But it was quite an experience because I'd never had such media presence.
Yeah. And
to be seen, and this is where the real full circle comes. The Attic Youth Center that I started this story with, the person in charge of food at the Attic Youth Center has been there forever. Like, she's never left. She's been there for 20 years, okay? She told me she saw me on 6ABC and that she, cried. She was like, I saw you. And I was like, that's Marcus. He made it, right? Because they didn't know, right? She held that thought, that interview up until literally 2 months ago when she called me and said, I need you to cater because I never forgot. Right? Like, I never forgot. I remembered you. I saw your name. I saw you on 6ABC. I was like, wow, we got to support Marcus. this is epic. Like, this is a really important space because all these kids that are here right now don't recognize that they could be you in 10 years. And I was like, damn, because who was I looking up to? Right? Well, I was like, well, who was I looking up to too? And I'm just like, all this full circle moment, this kind of kismet space, right? Now let's backtrack. Right, that was 2 months ago. But in December of last year, I still didn't feel like I deserved something. And so I was kind of like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But I know that people need a space, right? I was like, I know that people need a space. I know that people need to continue gathering. And I sat down with a friend. And he was like, well, what do you want to do? So I started kind of thinking about my life, thinking about the journey of this experience that I've had. You know where I always hang out when I go down to the neighborhood? The alleyway. The alleyway is the hot spot. Like, if you're queer of any kind, you have found yourself in an alleyway with friends. It's kind of like, it's the space that we kind of gather or meet or hang out or take a break. So much of my childhood and my youth as a queer youth was brought up in that space, and it was where I ran to when I was sad some days and I didn't want to be home. I'm going to the alleyways. I'm gonna go see who's down there and just kind of be around my people and feel love. It just kind of started speaking to me in a way. I was like, what did you need when you were trying to start whatever it is, right? Whatever you came up with, what did you need? I was like, well, damn, I just wish I kind of had like a space to go to and have these conversations, like where I could have this kind of support and even just like share my grievances with other business owners that were struggling in the same space. And I was like, okay, good. We got a core, right? I was kind of just really trying to find it. And so I was like, okay, great, next. I'm also a singer who doesn't have support because I quit music because I thought that I would not make it as a trans artist. I didn't see anybody who was black and trans in the mainstream industry, right? And I didn't look this cute, okay? I wasn't this cute at the beginning. But like, you know, no shade, I wasn't this cute. So I was like, you're really in the middle and this pre-transition space is kind of hard to go through. I said, okay, so what if there are artists or creatives that also think that currently and need this space? Well, that's the second tagline. Okay, so business owners and creatives, right? It started to go through this space, and that led me to like, well, what about all the queers that work in more professional spaces, right? Like in like corporate America, but like they don't at all get to be themselves the way they want to. They don't at all get to discuss and have the culture of queerness the way they want to. Okay, so this is a space for queer business owners, professionals, and creatives. Okay, to do what? Right? Like, I needed to finish it. And so I went and did a full 15-page business plan that helped me clarify what this was going to be for and how I was going to serve these people. And I say these people, but my people, our people, right? How I was going to serve the people that I came into contact with in all the ways that I love. I was like, I do love food, but I don't want to cook it. So how do I make this a social club about food that I don't got to cook? Right. And then I kind of was like, so let's take them to the best restaurants in the city that you know of and let's continue to build the space. So it started with happy hours, right? Just like, hey, meet us here. We're going to have this conversation. We're going to network and talk to each other. And I was introducing people to restaurants in the queer scene too, where people don't realize that the owners may be queer. You know, that one night in December, I sat for 4 months planning, organizing, strategizing, thinking, labeling, right? The one thing that I was told was, people make the mistake of doing too much research and they never get in the market. If you don't get in the market, you will never know, right, like how the market's going to respond to you. And so I was like, right, it has been 4 months and ain't nobody heard from me since, right? So I went on a fundraiser and I was sharing it everywhere. I was giving out like free Kool-Aids and free juices to people if they would just give me a follow. Like obviously in the neighborhood because that was not feeling safe anywhere else. But like, you know, I was like, if you support what I'm doing, like, you know, please donate and like, here's a juice. You know, I was trying to like make it pretty, but I had labeled the juices. The bottles had Alleyway Dinner Society on them, right? But people were like, well, what is you doing exactly? And it got the interest in all the things. And I was able to pay for someone to do our website, which I was able to pay for someone to help me like on the back end of things. Amazing. And then I was like, okay, bet we got to keep moving. If we don't keep moving, people are going to forget all about this. So I was like, okay, great. What are we going to do next? So here I go on Threads. I'm going to go hard. I'm going to start, you know, chit-chatting and yibber-yabbing in people's comment sections. And bam, I started forming partnerships. I mean, we're on a partnership 4 right now. And I was like, okay, maybe you are onto something. Maybe you know what you're doing. Why do you keep pretending you don't know what you're doing. Then we somehow ended up on a multi-city tour of the East Coast. And now that's
Amazing.
where we are right now. Right?
Cool.
So we'll be in DC for World Pride. I think it's just been quite a journey to see me come from a chef world. I will always be Chef Marcu. That will never change. I also want to curate a space for people to feel and get what they need and find mentorship and support. We already did our first private event in New York. And it was big and it was beautiful, and it was at this wonderful creative studio. Our own bartender, and we had a beautiful 8-foot charcuterie spread. And I was like, yes, this is what I want. This is what I want. And everybody in that room was so impacted by the space. And to me, again, with the imposter syndrome, who just kind of was like, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal. I didn't know that Glad was in the room. I had Glad in the room on my third event. Get out of here, bro. Go imposter somewhere else, because now you're making me mad, right?
Yeah, we need to throw that imposter syndrome out the window.
Then to find out that that person who was also involved with Glad just so happened to be the head co-chair of events at Bloomberg. Are you serious? Are you serious? What's going on right now? I think that for anybody who is probably in that same little doubtful, not sure space, am I going to make it? Is this going to work? It's going to feel like that. You kind of just have to fight past those feelings, because when you do, it's almost like the initiation, right? Like if I can fight past these doubts, then I can get what I need and I can serve the people I want to serve, and I can make this bigger picture come true. But someone asked me later, like, yeah, what was the purpose? What was the true purpose of Alleyway? I want Alleyway to feel like home. When I go to the alleyways and I see my people that I know are always going to be there, I feel at home, I feel safe, I feel happy, I feel giddy. All the things that a lot of queer people never got, right? As far as family, as far as home is concerned. I want people to continue getting that feeling from being in the space that Alleyway has anything to do with. So,
Marcus, this is amazing.
Thank you.
It's incredible to look back at your story and to look at your resilience and the way you've been able to push forward. And like you just said, you stick to it and it's going to work out. You're going to figure it out. And there will be reminders along the way that, oh, you're doing better than you think.
Yeah, for sure.
And suddenly there's a reporter at your house tasting your food.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, all that being said, as we head to wrap up our conversation,
Sure.
first and foremost, for our viewers, for our listeners, for anyone, what's the best way for them to support your work and to connect with you?
I think the best way to support my work is to pay attention. Follow us on all our platforms, watch the work, support the work, share the work. Even if you may not be queer or you are just an ally, you know, like you don't know who in your circle may need to be in this space and find home. Any other way you could support us would probably be like, who do you think we need to be in the room with, right? Who do you think we need to connect with to make this stronger, to make it more accessible to people? Yeah, that's the best way you can truly support what we're doing right now.
Awesome. Perfect. Okay, are you ready for the way we like to wrap up our conversations?
I'm ready. What are we doing?
This is a rapid fire response. We're going to fly through a bunch of different questions.
Okay.
You ready?
Okay,
okay, so obviously you're a chef, so I got to do some food questions.
Yeah.
So what's your go-to comfort food?
Okay, without question, hot pot.
Ooh.
Hot pot immediately. I need a bunch of ingredients in a hot bowl of soup. I'm telling you, hot bowls of soup. That's what I want. Hot pot immediately. That's my.
Okay, next question. If you could describe your perfect dinner party with just 3 words, what 3 words would you choose?
Impact, unity, perseverance.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Okay. Favorite song you've been listening to?
Speechless by Dan and Shay. Do you know that song?
Yeah,
I love Speechless. Yeah, that's the one that always gets me. Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Okay, tomorrow you have to get on an airplane and go on a 7-day trip.
Okay.
Where are you going and what are you doing on your trip?
Immediately, I thought of Bali. And I'm eating as much fresh food as possible. Seafood, definitely. I'm probably going to do wild amounts of zip lining, tubing down those like strange rivers. I'm probably going to feed some monkeys because I love monkeys. And I would also probably try to learn at least 1 or 2 recipes homegrown from somebody's like Bali grandmother. Yeah. I need that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, last question before we close it out. You walk into an elevator. The other person in that elevator is your younger self. You can decide which younger self it is. It's a 30-second elevator ride. Very short, and then one of you is getting off. What do you say to this person, to this younger version of yourself?
I would say, hey you, it's all gonna work out. Be steadfast, stand on all your words, show up wherever, whenever, and loud as ever. and always remember that you are home the same way you want to provide home for other people. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
The best way to end out the episode. Okay, well, Marcus, thank you so much for joining us today. That's it for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in, and please be sure to like, subscribe, and share with all your people, and be sure to follow us and Marcus on all major social platforms. Until next time, be kind, be bold, be you. Thank you so much.